Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
For the past 3 months, I've been taking my grandmother to the grocery store every Saturday. She had knee surgery back in July, and the doctor said she'd need at least 6 months to recover. Before the operation, she was completely independent. She'd lived alone for 15 years after my grandfather died, managing everything by herself. But now she needed crutches to get around, and she hated asking for help. I insisted on driving her to the store each week. She hated being dependent on anyone, but she knew she needed the assistance. That Saturday started like any other. We had our usual list of items she needed for the week. She moved slowly through the store, leaning heavily on her crutches, but she was determined to pick out everything herself. I stayed close by, ready to grab things from high shelves or carry the basket. We made our way to the cereal aisle because she wanted to get some oatmeal. A woman and her son, maybe 10 years old, came rushing into the aisle. They seemed rushed, and the woman had this irritated expression on her face. The boy reached up to grab a box of cereal from the shelf, stretching on his tiptoes. He lost his balance slightly and bumped right into my grandmother. My grandmother wobbled on her crutches, and I quickly reached out to steady her. I apologized right away, even though it wasn't really our fault. The woman barely looked at us. Her eyes were cold and dismissive. She snapped at us to watch where we were going. She didn't even acknowledge that her son had caused the bump. My grandmother smiled and said there was no harm done, but the woman wasn't interested in being civil. She told us we should be more careful and that we were blocking the aisle. I felt my jaw tighten. We weren't blocking anything. The aisle was narrow, but there was plenty of room to pass. I told her we were just shopping like everyone else. She made this huffing sound and tried to push past us, but instead of waiting 2 seconds for us to move aside, she shoved forward. Her shoulder hit my grandmother hard enough that she stumbled. I caught her just before she fell. I yelled at the woman, asking what was wrong with her. The woman whipped around, angry. She shouted that we should keep my grandmother at home if she couldn't walk properly. She called her an old hag. The words hit me hard. My grandmother went pale and I saw her eyes fill with hurt. I was stunned and asked her what she just said about my grandmother. Her son looked mortified. He tugged on her sleeve and begged his mother to just leave, but she yanked her arm away from him. She yelled that she wouldn't be disrespected by some old cripple and her bratty grandkid. Before I could respond, she lunged forward and shoved my grandmother again. This time she used both hands, and the force was brutal. My grandmother's crutches flew out from under her, and she started falling. A man shopping nearby saw what was happening and rushed over. He caught my grandmother before she hit the ground. I was shaking with rage and fear. The commotion drew attention immediately. Other shoppers stopped and stared. The store manager came running from the front and asked what was going on. The woman decided to lie. She claimed that my grandmother and I had assaulted her and her son. My mouth dropped open. I said loudly that it wasn't true, and that she was the one who had pushed my grandmother. The man who caught my grandmother spoke up immediately. He said that he'd seen everything and that this woman had pushed the elderly lady. He said she'd done it twice. Another shopper, a woman with a toddler in her cart, nodded. She confirmed that she'd seen it too and that the woman had been completely out of line. The manager pulled out his radio and called for security to come to aisle 7. He also said to call the police. The woman went pale. She insisted that this was ridiculous and that she was the victim, but nobody was buying it. A third person came forward, an older gentleman who'd been shopping at the other end of the aisle. He said he'd heard and seen the whole thing, including her calling my grandmother terrible names and physically attacking her. Security arrived first, 2 large men who positioned themselves between us and the woman. Then the police showed up. The manager explained the situation, and all 3 witnesses gave their statements. I showed them my grandmother's crutches, which had clattered to the floor. When she was pushed, the officers looked at the woman with disgust. They said that she was under arrest for assault. She screamed that this was insane and that they couldn't arrest her, but they did. They handcuffed her right there in the cereal aisle. Her son started crying, tears streaming down his face. Through his sobs, he apologized to us over and over. He said that his mother was always like this. My heart broke for him. He was just a kid stuck with a mother who clearly had serious problems. My grandmother reached out and patted his head gently. She said softly that it was all right and that he'd done nothing wrong. The officers led the woman away. She was still screaming about lawsuits and how she'd been wronged and how we'd all pay for this. Her voice echoed through the store until they got her outside. The manager approached us, looking genuinely distressed. He apologized for what had happened in his store and offered to cover our groceries for the day. He said it was the least he could do. We finished our shopping in a daze. Other customers kept coming up to us asking if my grandmother was okay. They said they couldn't believe what they'd witnessed. The store manager personally walked us to the checkout and covered everything. When we loaded the groceries into my car, my grandmother was quiet. I thought she might be traumatized, but when I looked at her, she was smiling slightly. She said that she'd been worried about being a burden since the surgery. I told her she wasn't a burden. She said she knew that now. She explained that today had shown her that there were good people out there. She mentioned the man who caught her, the witnesses who spoke up, and even that poor boy apologizing for his mother. She said the world wasn't as bad as it sometimes seemed. I hugged her carefully, mindful of her crutches. We heard later that the woman was charged with assault and battery. Several witnesses had given statements, and the store's security footage captured everything. Her son went to stay with his father while she dealt with the legal aftermath. I'm a 21-year-old guy from Germany, and a few months ago I took a road trip through the USA with my best friend. It was supposed to be this amazing adventure. You know, we've been planning it for over a year, saving up money from our part-time jobs back home. My friend works at a bookstore and I do warehouse work, so it took us a while to get enough cash together for flights, a rental car, and everything else. But we finally made it happen. The trip had been incredible so far. We'd driven through California, seen the Pacific Ocean for the first time, ate way too many burgers, and just soaked in everything American. My friend is one of those people who loves taking photos of everything. He had his camera around his neck constantly, wore cargo shorts, sandals with socks, and a baseball cap he bought at our first gas station. He looked like every tourist stereotype you can imagine, but he didn't care. That's what I love about him. When we got to Nevada, Las Vegas was obviously on our list. I mean, you can't go to that part of America and not see Vegas, right? We'd both turned 21 recently, so we could actually go into the casinos legally. Back home in Germany, the drinking age is lower, but we knew America had different rules, and we wanted to respect them. The drive into Vegas was insane. Coming over that last hill and seeing all those massive hotels and casinos rising out of the desert was like nothing I'd ever seen. We checked into our cheap hotel off the strip, changed clothes, and headed out to explore. Now I should mention what I was wearing because it becomes important later. It was 37 degrees Celsius outside, which is really hot, but I packed this nice black shirt that I wanted to wear out. I paired it with black jeans and black shoes because I thought it looked good. I'm about 6 feet tall and weigh around 200 pounds. Pretty broad in the shoulders from the warehouse work. My friend joked that I looked too serious, but I ignored him. We spent the first hour just walking through different casinos, completely amazed by everything. The lights, the sounds, the sheer size of these places. It was overwhelming in the best way. We weren't really gambling much, just playing a few slot machines here and there, mostly just wandering around and taking it all in. We were in one of the bigger casinos when my friend told me he needed to use the toilet. I told him I'd wait, and he disappeared into the crowd. I found a spot next to a large pillar where I wouldn't be in anyone's way and just stood there, looking around at all the blinking lights in every color you can imagine. It was honestly breathtaking. Then I felt it. Tap, tap, tap on my shoulder from behind. I turned around and there was this woman, maybe in her 50s, and she already had this furious expression on her face. I was immediately confused and asked her if I could help with something, but before I could even finish, she started yelling. She shouted that finally she'd found me, complaining that security guards like me couldn't keep hiding from their duties. I was completely thrown off and told her that she was mistaken, that I was just a tourist, and didn't work for the security department at all. She didn't listen at all. She actually reached out and grabbed my wrist, trying to pull me with her while yelling words I really don't want to repeat. Some were about how lazy I was, how incompetent, how I should be doing my job. People were starting to stare. I was genuinely scared. I'm a big guy, sure, but I'd never been in a situation like this. I kept trying to tell her I was just a tourist, that I didn't work there. I even started speaking German to prove I wasn't American, thinking that would convince her. I said in my native language that I was a tourist and didn't work at the casino. But that didn't bother her one bit. She just kept pulling me, trying to drag me somewhere, still cursing at me and calling me dumb and unprofessional. I was looking around desperately for help, for someone to intervene, but everyone just seemed to be staring or quickly walking past. Just when I thought she was going to pull me around a corner and I'd be completely lost, I saw my friend. He come out of the toilet and spotted what was happening. His eyes went wide and he immediately started looking around, and then he ran off. For a second I thought he was abandoning me, but then I realized he was getting help. The woman was still going off on me about how I needed to escort her somewhere, how there was some problem that needed security attention immediately. How dare I stand around doing nothing? About a minute later, my friend came back with an actual security guard. This guy was huge. I mean really big, like something you'd see in a cartoon. Massive shoulders, had to be over 6.5 feet tall, built like he could lift a car. The guard walked up, assessed the situation quickly, and then gently but firmly pulled me aside away from the woman. He leaned in close and whispered to me that I could go, that he would handle the situation from here. I wasn't sure if he thought I actually worked there or if he understood I was just some tourist being harassed, but I didn't care. He was freeing me from this nightmare situation. I nodded gratefully. The guard then turned to the crowd and spoke loudly, clearly putting on a show. He announced that he would make sure this employee got his punishment later for avoiding his duties. The woman looked somewhat satisfied by this, though she was still yelling about how unprofessional everything was. The guard then escorted her away into the crowd of people, her voice still carrying even when they disappeared. My friend grabbed my arm and we basically speed walked out of that casino and headed to a different location entirely. Once we were far enough away and sitting down at a bar in another hotel, I explained everything that had happened from my perspective. My friend couldn't stop laughing, not at me, but just at the sheer absurdity of it all. He kept shaking his head and joked that me working security was ridiculous since I could barely find my own hotel room. He had a point. I'm not exactly the most authoritative person. I'm pretty laid back and definitely don't have that security guard demeanor. The idea that someone would mistake me for casino security just because I wore all black was ridiculous. We stayed in Vegas 2 more days, and I made sure to wear bright colored shirts the whole time. My friend still brings it up whenever we talk about the trip. He sends me messages about it randomly, always finding it hilarious how confused and scared I looked when that woman was dragging me around. Sometimes he'll see someone in all black and text me a photo asking if they're security too. I'm the black sheep of my family, a middle child born with money, but never fitting in with what they expected. They had plans for me and I went along because why make waves? Thanks to my parents' connections, I got into good schools, did my military service, got promoted to captain, then got shipped off to college abroad. After college, I landed a government job through family connections again, but I used that position to meet people and learn. A few years in, I started setting up businesses in our coastal city. The money came from different places: allowances, a small inheritance from my grandmother, investments, a fund my parents started when I was born, and gifts from relatives who probably wanted to make sure I wouldn't embarrass them. I'm low maintenance, so it added up. My businesses did well. Our city attracts tons of tourists, both local and international, and locals who want to mingle with them for various reasons. You know how coastal cities are. I own a restaurant, 3 popular bars, a cab company, a hotel resort, a cleaning service chain, a building and residential guard service, and several rental properties around the country. I run my businesses properly. All my staff are on salary with full benefits. They get comprehensive medical insurance with dental and optical coverage on top of the government health care. We're legally required to provide retirement savings, minimum 21 days leave, but I give 30. My businesses offer paid overtime, unhindered medical leave for surgeries and serious conditions, and allowances for treatments like chemotherapy or dialysis. One of my employees, an older lady who'd worked her way up to manager, was brilliant. Everyone adored her. She came to me one day and explained she needed a hysterectomy. Her mother had died from cervical cancer, and since she already had 4 kids, her doctor recommended the procedure as a preventive measure. She found a private hospital in our insurance network and scheduled everything. When she applied for leave days, I rejected the request, not because I didn't want her to have the surgery, but because this qualified for medical leave, not regular leave days. I wanted her to save her vacation time and use the proper medical leave so she'd keep earning her full salary during recovery, however long it took. The surgery went perfectly. Quick recovery time. The bill was supposed to be covered by our company insurance, and we'd gotten all the necessary pre-authorizations beforehand. A few months later, she came to work looking destroyed. We thought maybe the tests showed cancer, but it was worse in a different way. The hospital had billed her directly because the insurance company refused to pay, claiming the procedure wasn't covered. We were furious. We'd done everything right. I sent my accounts manager to their office to sort it out. He came back even angrier than when he'd left. He told me that after showing them all our documentation, they'd basically told him to buzz off and wouldn't discuss it further. I decided to go myself. They kept me waiting for an hour. Then someone came out and told me the director from the head office was in the area but was too busy to meet with me. I was livid. I booked a flight to the capital city 2 hours away and went straight to their head office. When I got there, I demanded an explanation for why they'd refused to pay for a procedure we had pre-authorized. The insurance representative told me they'd revised their policy and that the procedure wasn't covered anymore. I asked when the policy was revised. They said it had been revised a month ago. I pointed out that the surgery was 5 months ago and we had all the documentation. They claimed the revision was 12 months retrospective. I asked why nobody had told us about this massive change. I'd held policies with them for years, and this was major news. They explained that they'd told their large clients and would tell other clients when their policies came up for renewal. I demanded to speak to their boss, either the vice president or the CEO. The representative told me the CEO wasn't there, and the vice president had no time for me. Then they said something that made my blood boil. They told me they were a large company and had no time to argue semantics with low-end clients. If I didn't like it, I could leave and find a new insurance company. I've dealt with disrespect before. I'm used to being the family disappointment, but this was too much. This wasn't about me. This was about my employee who'd done nothing wrong. I flew back home, went straight to the hospital, and paid the entire bill myself. When I took the receipt to my employee, she broke down and insisted she would do anything to pay me back. She offered to work extra hours, anything. I refused and told her this wasn't her fault and she wasn't paying for something completely out of her control. After I cooled down, I met with my directors. Those words kept echoing in my head. Low-end clients. I asked them how long it would take to switch to another insurance company. We researched their biggest rivals. One company offered an incredible deal: comprehensive coverage, dental, optical, mental health, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, rehabilitative services, mobility device acquisition, smart cards for outpatient visits, death and funeral benefits, expanded coverage area, and coverage for up to 6 dependents plus spouse. It cost slightly more, but I didn't care. The switch would take 6 months for full coverage. We crossed our fingers that nobody would get seriously ill during the transition. When I went back to the old insurance to cancel, they seemed unfazed. They thought I was just pulling one small restaurant. Then I walked in with several people and boxes of documents. I pulled my restaurant, 3 bars, cab company, hotel resort, cleaning service chain, guard service, and all my rental properties. Their faces when my lawyer told them my family name? Pure shock, awe, confusion, and panic. Suddenly, they wanted to negotiate. The head office sent their director, who'd been too busy to see me, plus their chief legal officer, chief financial officer, and president. Their CEO called me personally from abroad. They all tried sweet-talking me, offering apologies and better deals. I told them I was done and we were switching. No amount of begging would change my mind. Within 6 weeks, we were completely out. During the waiting period before the new insurance started, I visited my family for the holidays. My older brother's kids love me and my family has been trying to reconnect after realizing how they treated me. I told my friends and family what happened. They all pulled their businesses too. The insurance company took a massive hit. When the pandemic came around, they were barely surviving. They went into receivership and got acquired by the company I'd switched to, their biggest rival. The CEO and directors got their golden parachutes and resigned. Most regular employees were kept on, but the senior executives, including the ones who told my manager to buzz off, were let go. The building they operated from in our town got sold during the acquisition. I bought it, remodeled the whole thing, and turned it into a business rental space. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.